Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is Dan Sherrard-Smith, the founder and CEO of MotherTree.com, which is the world's first money carbon calculator. And we're going to get into that in a minute. He's also an expert in the startup world. He's had 5 startups himself and has had some really great successes. I'm imagining some really great failures too. And he talks and speaks all over about the lessons he's learned, building startups. And then really cool, he also built the startup that achieved the best deal ever on Dragon's Den, which is kind of like, is that the UK's version of Shark Tank kind of, Dan?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And we met recently in Dubai through a mutual friend of ours named Sebastian Bates and his foundation, the Bates Foundation. He brought all of the various patrons of his foundation together. And Dan and I were there and got to talk. And I just thought, oh my God, I got to get this guy on the show. So Dan, what Dan does now is he works with impact founders and supports them particularly in their personal branding because of the difference that that can make in the impact that they can make. Is that fair to say, Dan?
Absolutely fair, John. And it's great to be here.
Thank you.
It was great to meet you in Dubai. So looking forward to picking up that conversation.
Likewise, me too. And I'm so glad you're here. And so let's go back and just kind of go through that stuff in order as it came up, because there's a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about and what I already said about you, and then we can go other places too. But so let's just start with mymothertree.com. What does it mean that it's the world's first money carbon calculator? Like, I know some about it, but explain it to us.
When I left look after my bills, my wife was pregnant, and it just really made me question what was going on with the world. And it started to make me think, what's the world going to be like for this person when they're in their mid-30s, when they're my age? And I quit look after my bills. It became a comfortable job by then. And I'm sure we'll cover that. That's the Dragon's Den story. But it became a comfortable job, and I quit while my wife was pregnant. I think my mates thought I was going mad at the time. But I just started researching what could individuals and businesses do to address the climate crisis, and quite quickly it became much more than just carbon. But that's where I focused the efforts to begin with. And I realized through interviews with founders, CEOs, finance professionals, but also mums and dads and people just starting their careers, that there's 2 actions above all others that have a disproportionate amount of influence. And those are where our bank is going and where our pension is going. So I guess that's the 401k over your side of the pond.
Yeah.
And it has a colossal impact. So for the average UK citizen, we produce about 10 tons of carbon through our lifestyle activities. Things like we drive a car, whether we eat beef or not, those kind of things. Yeah. We produce another 10 tons. So we double it in effect with our bank and our pension.
Wow.
And it's the same impact for businesses. So Google holds about 130 billion pounds in their banks, and that money is twice as big as all of Google's reported emissions put together, which is no small amount, right?
Right.
And so when that penny dropped for me, I built what began as a colossal Excel sheet and is much, much more sophisticated now. A calculator which, instead of looking at what's the carbon impact of our diet or the flights we take, which are also important, it looks at the carbon impact of our money, in specifically where our banks are investing and where our pensions are invested.
Wow. Okay. So that's huge. I remember when I was young, finding out about the Union of Concerned Scientists, and I donated to them, with small amounts because I was a student, but they sent out a book about how to make a difference with your purchases. And like one of the things that they said that I remember being kind of like was obvious in hindsight, but I hadn't thought about it. They were like, look, the weight of the thing that you're purchasing is a really big factor. So when you purchase a refrigerator, like shopping consciously for that is going to really make a bigger difference than, like the pair of socks. They matter too, but right. And so I think that, I really like that because it's obvious in hindsight, but it's not the first thing people are thinking about when they're thinking reducing carbon emissions, right? They're like, oh, well, I should ride my bike. It's like, well, yeah, you want to make a really big difference.
That's exactly it. Sorry to come in, John, but that is exactly it. When I talked to people early on, they said, "Oh, I do the recycling," and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's part of it. But I was looking, like you said about the fridge, the weight of the item. I was looking at where's the leverage points,
Yes. Yeah. I love
where's the
that.
biggest leverage we can have for the lowest effort, and the bank and pension are disproportionately to the other two areas. If you're interested, is influencing others, which kind of plays into the communication and the leadership point,
Yes.
and who we vote for. Those are basically the three areas: our money, how we communicate with others, and who we vote for. Those are the disproportionate levers that we have.
Wow. Okay, that's really good. I like that. Now, and just to be really clear, so that I'm tracking and we're all tracking, not wanting to assume I know what you're talking about, but when you say the banks and the pensions, it's where they're investing, and are they being conscious? Because you could be at home recycling and putting solar panels on your house while all of your pension money is going into something that's just multiple times over negating everything you're doing.
That's exactly it. This happened for me, right? So I got passionate about this. I changed my diet. I enjoyed eating meat. I completely cut that out. I changed how I travel, and I looked at my pension about 6 months later. My pension 2% was going to BP and Shell, 1% was going to British American Tobacco, 1% was going to gambling. And these
Yeah,
are just things that I'd never choose to invest in, and yet every month some of my cash had been going there.
yeah.
And it's the same for the bank. My bank was one called HSBC. They put about £10 billion into. We should get that in dollars, but I talk about it
It's
in
okay.
pounds.
We
The,
speak pounds here too. Pounds are a
okay,
little more than dollars, so right.
pounds are what you guys weigh in, right, as opposed to
Yeah,
what you pay in.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, HSBC put £10 billion a year into fossil fuel expansion. And so, by having some money with HSBC, I am complicit in their investment strategy.
yeah. And it's something that I mean, I've been watching what's going on with like whatever it is, if you want to argue that it's not human caused or whatever, but like all of a sudden from the moment we discovered oil, there's just this radically much higher amount of carbon in the atmosphere, and temperatures are just going up. Like, no question. I think that recently, Dan, we've crossed some thresholds, and like I think last year was the first year where there was like a lot of the forests just didn't do a net intake of carbon, and like the current that keeps you guys warm in the UK is on the verge of breaking down, which would mean that like all of Europe would just go freaking way colder in the age of global warming, but that's because of the shifts in the climate, right? And I follow this guy who's a dad and a climate scientist. And I'm a dad, and you're a dad. And I'm not a climate scientist, but like it's pretty obvious to me that something is happening that is potentially going to destroy civilization. I think life on Earth will probably go on, like cockroaches will eventually evolutionize into something. But human civilization, I don't know, man. Like it's not the earth we're trying to save, it's us.
Absolutely, the rock will keep spinning.
Yeah,
It's just what kind of life forms are on that rock in the next 100 years?
yeah,
It's not that far away in terms of where we're headed at the current pace. Where I'm optimistic is especially with finance, we know the lever to pull.
Yeah.
And if we can start shifting enough money out of fossil fuel companies and into renewable energy, just as what
Yeah.
there are more places we need to fund, but just
Yeah.
as one clear point we need to get money to, that will dramatically change the amount of emissions,
Yeah.
and we'll start to stabilize our planet again, because it's
Yeah.
incredibly unstable at the moment. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm scared. I'm scared for my boy. I'm scared
Yeah.
for what that means.
Me too.
But I want to do everything to create a future which is fun to live in.
Yeah.
Why
Well,
not? We can.
I'm also heartened because I watch a lot of the reports about just the like there are a lot of things that are happening that are good, right? Like the amount of power produced by solar and how efficient the solar panels are getting, and like the cost for battery storage and the density of battery storage. The cost is going way down and the density is going way up. And I just think, we can totally do this. Like, this is totally doable. And one thing that I think about, Dan, is that we need to be grateful for oil. I'm actually really grateful for oil, because without discovering crude oil, we would have probably cut down every tree on the planet and killed every sperm whale for its oil for candles and all that stuff. But like, we got to move on now, right? Like, thank you for what it has done for us and thank you for what it's taught us and made possible, but that ain't working anymore. It's time to take the next step, right?
I love that perspective, and yeah, I think there's this case of let's just bash fossil fuels, but they've taken us a long way. They've lifted the poverty line like nothing we've ever seen in the history of
Unbelievable.
humanity before.
Yeah.
It is. I love what you said. It's about being grateful, but there's a time and a place for it, and it's
Yeah.
it's in the past now. I mean, my dad worked for BP his whole life,
Yeah. My
right?
dad was in the
Um,
oil and gas
I'm
industry
not,
too. Yep.
I'm not, and my dad draws a pension from BP. I'm not ignorant from where I've come from,
Yeah.
but I am also mindful we can change. We don't have, and
Yeah.
we are humans. We're the masters of change if we
Yeah.
choose to. We can absolutely change that course.
Now, is my mother tree, is that specific to the UK, or is that something anybody could go to and get something from?
So the online stuff is specific to the UK.
Okay.
We have a table of UK banks. There's a
Okay.
couple of resources that, if you're in the US and listening, are well worth looking at. One is Banking on Climate Chaos,
Uh-huh.
which will show you the 50 worst banks in the world. JP Morgan is top of it.
Okay.
It's basically Chinese, American, and Canadian banks at the top, and then Barclays, which is a
Yeah.
British, are in eighth place. The other resource to check out is banking, the carbon bankroll. I mean, I guess we can get links in the show.
We'll put it in. Yeah.
Yeah, great, and that's also a great resource for businesses to understand what they can do in the US. The MotherTree service works globally, but the free resources online, it costs us a lot of money to research and get really precise where banks are investing, and so we've only covered the UK to date.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, keep going, brother.
I appreciate that.
So now let's talk. So that was kind of your aha moment, was when your wife was pregnant and you actually left a cushy job to go do something because your heart made you do it. Now, leading up to that, though, you had a company that achieved the best ever deal on Dragon's Den. You want to tell us about that? I'd love to hear about the experience of being on Dragon's Den and all that too. So,
Yeah, that was a riot. So, yeah, I mean, the story there were the two original founders, Will and Henry, had a business called The Big Deal. They approached me to be the third founder and look after my bills. And they'd realized in the UK, so we have very lots of different energy providers in the UK.
right.
In California has one or two, Texas has 50. So this is more applicable to someone in Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
Change energy provider and you can save some money. It's a bit like changing phone contract. I guess that's a kind of more interesting example for Californians, and other states with only one energy provider. And so what it meant in the UK is if you're constantly switching energy provider, you can save money. But once you've done it once or twice, people can't really be bothered.
Yeah.
And what we built was a system which automatically switched you whenever your price went up.
Oh, good
It's
for
the same
you.
energy, right? The gas isn't purple gas and then green gas, and it's not, it's the same electricity. When I turn on the light bulb,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's just a
Yeah.
different name on the bill.
Yeah.
And you get slightly better service with one energy company than the other, but it's just
Yeah.
fundamentally the same thing. And so that's what we built. And we were Y Combinator backed. So I worked on it on my own for 6 months. Spreadsheets and landing pages and sellotape. It's the classic startup story.
I love it.
We got Y Combinator backed after 6 months, and then Dragon's Den after a year. And Will and Henry went on. We went to the show. Will and Henry went on because they're the original two founders, right?
Yeah.
All five dragons bid for the business. It was a 3-hour negotiation, and they distilled it to 10 minutes of TV.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's how
I mean,
TV
it's
is.
mad. And I think at that point, 2018, it was the longest negotiation in the Dent history.
Wow.
And one of the reasons was Peter Jones, who's the biggest dragon, kind of like the most well-known before Stephen Bartlett went on the show. He knew about the Y Combinator deal. And so there was this whole negotiation about how to make sure we weren't going to undercut Y Combinator investors,
Uh-huh.
get a good deal out of Dragon's Den. So they all bid 3 times each, and we ended up getting 2 brilliant dragons, Jenny Campbell and Ted Stravani. And yeah, it was. I mean, that made the business, right?
Yeah.
So overnight, we went from 10,000 customers to 50,000, and within 6 months, we had 100,000 UK homes, UK customers.
I mean, that's kind of a dream come true, right?
Oh, it put us on the map. It was a dream come true. It put us on the map. It's so funny because living it was some of the hardest months I've ever lived because the
Oh, of
business almost
course.
collapsed. Right, the
Oh,
volume we were getting, the amount
oh,
of people asking for things. We had 2 people on customer service, like picking up the phones pre Dragon's Den.
yeah.
The day after, we were straight recruiting. We
Yeah.
did not anticipate getting that much interest.
Yeah.
We sort of planned for about 50% of what we got. It just had
Yeah.
this viral thing in the UK. It went bonkers, and we just rode that wave as best we could. And I fell off several times. It was a tough time, but yeah, dream come true in the sense of if you'd asked me at 25, what did I want? I would have said that. And if you asked me at 31 going through it, I would have said, give me something slower.
Can I tell you some old guy stories?
Oh, please do.
So I had a .com company called bigwords.com. I was one of 4 co-founders, and we were back in the day, like 1998. We made the first ever tell a friend program.
No.
Oh yeah.
Love
And
that.
and then somebody went in and like spammed Lawrence Lessig, who was a really famous um, attorney in the internet world at the time. And he wrote back to us and was all pissed. And then we told him what was going on. And he actually became a great supporter and fan. And we had to create our own shopping carts. And there was a time when we created our shopping cart, right? And we implemented it right before the big season. And then something went wrong with it. And people would come in and they would load up their book bag with their books because we sold textbooks over the internet. And then they would go to check out, but somebody else would come in and take over their session and get their books in their bag and then go buy all the books. And so like we were shipping books to the wrong people. Oh my God. And I was running customer service at that point. And I remember I would just hold customer service reps while they cried on my shoulder. Like it was such a nightmare. And so, and then we had this guy named Mini Me, who was the guy in the movie, right?
Yeah,
And
me.
Vern Troyer, great guy, God rest his soul. We did a big thing with him where we celebrated the coming of the year 2000, and he dressed up in one of our orange jumpsuits with our logo on it, and I wore one, and we sang a song together in a big park in New York, and it went on TV. And then he went on MTV and talked about big words. And dude, we could not keep up with the traffic. We crashed for like 6 hours as we, I mean, and so like, I know the feeling.
You've lived it, yeah. And it's fun because, like, looking back, it's a great story. But yeah,
Oh,
living it, oh my
oh,
gosh,
it's
yeah,
so
a
hard.
lot of those grey hairs are
Yeah.
from that time.
I remember going home. My typical day was I would go home at like midnight, get home by 12:30 or 1, cry myself to sleep, honestly, wake up at like 6 or 7 in the morning and be at the office before everybody would show up, welcome everybody in, get them all pumped up, do the first, shift, and then they'd all go home around 5. And then the next shift would come in and I'd stay with them, till we all went home at like 11. Then I'd go home and cry myself to sleep. And then, it was like, oh my God. It's one of the greatest memories. Right. But it was hard in the moment.
I think that's exactly it. Like the memories and the team camaraderie of,
Yeah.
we were all in it together.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's so rare to get that kind of momentum. Once you have it, you don't want to let it go.
No. Yeah.
We rode that
No.
wave.
Yeah.
It was like very, very tough. We rode that
Yeah.
wave as long as we could.
Well,
Uh,
and then your wife got pregnant and you started looking at bigger pictures.
so we sold that business to go compare, right?
Okay.
It was this lightning thing of
Yeah.
Dragon's Den investment around August 2018, and then we sold about August 2019.
Okay. Cool. Well,
And
congrats, dude. What an entrepreneurial dream come true, right?
that was the dream, right? And so, had a kind of we did the earnout, but in the earnout, I was, we hit the earnout figures. It was we did, we did well on that, but yeah, it was a very comfortable job, not working the hours, I was working kind of,
Yeah.
8 a.m. to
Before.
midnight, like very similar. What you described is pretty much what I had as well. And suddenly space in my life, but also I felt a bit meaningless.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops.
And
I think I made some hand gesture.
yeah, I thought they were actually in your room for a second, those of you.
Yeah. I released the balloons for that one, Dan.
The sale has happened. Release the balloons. Yeah, I had this meaningless moment of just what's going on, and yeah, it was right when my wife was probably 6 months pregnant,
Yeah.
and it all hit home. And I gave, a 6-figure salary job, everything that I was like, this is what I want. It just wasn't when I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's not a completely unusual story, right?
Oh, I'm very aware that this is a path that's been trod by many, many before me. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's great that you went and did something about it, because that's not easy.
Yeah. I just find myself, I don't really hold back on that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not it's funny because I look at some of my mates and I'm like, yeah, some stability would be nice at times, but also I just couldn't do it. I
Yeah.
couldn't, now I kind of live the entrepreneur life for well over 10 years now, and I think I'm basically unemployable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, and get to my age having done that, and you definitely are unemployable.
But it's also the fun of it, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for the world. And like, when you start to see the impact that it has, and you have this, John, when we met, you just exude that impact. It's amazing, and it's just so much fun. This it's very, very different life to a lot of what the friends that I made, in my teenage years are
Yeah.
living. But yeah, it's where I want to be.
Well, and now you are working with impact founders. So let's define that. And then let's talk a little bit about what a difference their personal branding can make, maybe particularly in that arena. But I mean, I think beyond that arena too. But so tell us about what does impact founders mean to you? I mean, I think we can all, we get an idea, but I want to hear it from you, Dan.
Yeah, so for me, it's people who are having a meaningful difference, positive difference in this world, and whether that's on the climate or with other people, addressing poverty or addressing the gender pay gap. Uh, it's having a meaningful difference to create a better world.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop at impact founders, but that's kind of how I sum it up. It's change makers, those employees who are really rallying for good in the company. They're the ones who are saying, let's get that carbon calculated and let's do something about it. It's often those consultants and coaches who can come into companies and change them for the better.
Yeah.
Uh, just those kind of people who are really changing the world. And I'm a big believer that businesses and specifically founders can change the world. We see that consistently through since the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's what I think.
yeah,
That's, yep.
and so working at MotherTree, first 2 years of MotherTree, incredibly tough. Feast and famine was very real, right?
Yeah.
Lots of months where I was losing money, and my own money as well as my investors. And about November 2023, we started pulling in about 100 quality leads a week on that business. I realized before that we had a leads problem. We couldn't
Yeah.
get quality leads who I could speak to then sell the MotherTree product, which is reviewing banks and pensions. And once we started getting that kind of throughput, it completely changed the business. It made us very stable. It meant the business could be profitable. Good things started to happen. And in the summer, I wasn't as needed on the day to day of that business. And so I started thinking, what's next? What's the fifth? I didn't think of it like this, but what has become the fifth business? And I just got chatting to some of our founder clients who I basically love working with founders. I love their mindset. I
Yeah.
love how they think about problems. I just find it uplifting.
Yeah.
So I got chatting to some, and I just said, "Look, what's your problem? What are your problems? Just tell me what's going on. What's the? Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. My basic thing is what's shit in your business, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I start with, and 80% of the founders said I could do with more clients and more leads as a result.
I mean, hello, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we all live that. Anybody who's started a business, that is a reality at some point or most points. And I realized I had at least for impact founders especially, I had some of the answers, not all of them, but some of them. And so now I work with impact founders one to one. It's typically 3 months, and we just look at what they can do. It's mainly on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has completely changed the game for me,
Yeah.
and we go through the same process for impact founders. And for me, it's meant we get those leads that we need, but also 90% of our revenue comes from LinkedIn. I get we partnered with two of the world's leading climate scientists because of LinkedIn. Like they contacted me because of a post. Just stuff that I
Wow,
thought,
that's so cool.
yeah, it is really cool. And I would never have thought that was possible when I started LinkedIn 2 years ago. Like I had no followers 2 years ago. And it's just been incredible. So that's what I do. And I figure, look, if I can, I'm not the cleverest person in the room by any means. If I can do it, I can at least teach other people to do it way better than me.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Some of the founders are absolutely flying. It's just kind of, you need that couple of things and then off
Yeah.
off they go. Yeah.
Well, so without giving us all of your secrets, I know that a lot of the people listening here are on LinkedIn. They're active on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people would agree with you that that's the place to be for business. And so what maybe can you tell us a couple of counterintuitive things that you've realized?
Oh yeah. Like I'm happy to share as much as you want, John. For me, it's
Okay.
like value and impact.
Yeah.
So the three sort of big problems that I realized, and we really work hard to address. The first is so many founders, me included, for the two businesses that failed. We tend to build a product and then start looking around for where are the people who are going to come and use this awesome product.
Right.
And that's just not the case. Like, I've learned that the hard way too many times, which is twice.
Right.
uh, and I ran a business that for a year ran this business and made less than £3,000, and we raised £500,000 on that business. We gave a lot of that cash back, and and then MotherTree took 2 years to get really going, because we started with a solution, not a problem.
Right.
With MotherTree, we had to deconstruct it and build it again, and we got somewhere in the end. And so that's issue number one. Let's go build an audience first. Let's go and listen to the audience and see what they have to say and what I can solve. Right. So that's kind of,
Yeah.
rather than build it and they will come, the Kevin Costner movie. No, it's like, let's go and listen to people. That's a big
Yeah.
change for me. The
Okay,
second thing is,
that's really, really a big deal, I think, because I think, I work with a lot of coaches and founders and things like that. And I think you're absolutely right. And I got good coaching early on from someone who said, you know, before you go create the course you think they need, create the one sheet to sell the course you think they need and see if anyone will buy it. Right. And if they do, and you were totally right, great, make the course. But you'll probably find that, they want something a little different. And you can always work in what they need to, but give them what they think they need, or you'll never sell it.
that is exactly it. That's exactly it. And Daniel Priestley sums it up as sell first, build later.
Yeah.
That was the penny.
There you go. That's pretty quick.
Yeah, but I love that. I love that lesson. The second thing that I realized talking to founders is there's a huge reliance on their existing network in
Yeah.
terms of getting customers, and that's fine for the early customers. That's important, but it dries up pretty quickly. And then there's this shock if a lead sort of generation process hasn't been put in place. There's this shock of, oh shit, where's the money coming from? And the revenue roller coaster becomes very real at that point.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing on LinkedIn we work to do, is create a consistent lead conveyor belt, right? So when the
Yep.
when the referrals and the network starts to dry up, you don't have to have the roller coaster months.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's huge. That is definitely, and I think as a founder, as somebody starting a business, as somebody going out to do this, you're like, oh yeah, my network, right? And then it's like, and it does work. And then it doesn't, because they already know, and everybody that was interested did
And
it.
the,
And
and the dangerous part of that is, so you get those first customers and it's great. And so you're like, great, this is a thing. I'm going to invest in this. So you put more money in, but then the customers stop coming because the
yeah,
network is drying up.
yeah,
So that's almost like the most dangerous part for my experience that I've had
yeah,
for a business is we've thought we've had something because the early customers, we've put money in, and then it's, hang on, where are the rest of these customers that we thought were
yeah.
going to
What
spill over to
happened?
the product, right?
Yeah. Mom
Just
already bought as many as she was going to buy.
yeah, exactly. Where are the other versions of her? And then the third bit is LinkedIn takes far too long. And so lots of founders were like, look, I kind of tried LinkedIn, but writing posts take me hours. And what if no one likes my post? And do I really have anything to say anyway?
Yeah,
Right. Lots of those kind of things were coming up. I had all of this 2 years ago. Could I post? Did I really have a voice that people were willing to hear? Anything valuable to say? And were my clients even on LinkedIn? All of these kind of objection
yeah,
pieces. And the big thing here is this is about mindset, this part. And we built this system, this process, which is, it produces 7 quality pieces of content a week, which the founder writes. This isn't a, plug into AI or something. The founder writes this. We teach them the process. 7 quality pieces of content a week, 2 hours a week. And it's content. Once you start posting for 7 days a week, you start to show up in people's feeds way more than if you were posting once a week or reposting other people's content.
Yeah.
and you'll stick in their minds. What's really cool is once that happens, and I have this with MotherTree, and I have this with the lead gen piece, people start to come to you, and
Yeah.
they'll know me, and I'm like, I, I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are. And they're like, oh, yeah, you do this, and it's great. I'm like, great, let's jump on a call,
Yeah.
because they're just totally ready to buy, and they want, they love it,
Yeah.
because they just, I don't know, there's something magic about that 7 posts. Less than that, and we've done a lot of research in terms of what that reach
Yeah.
gets you. Less than that, you don't really show up enough. More than 7 posts, it's your engagement actually drops off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're flooding the platform
Flooding
already.
the zone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the key bits. 7 posts a week, but you can do it in 2 hours a week. It's actually possible. And quality stuff, right? It's genuine. It's authentic.
Yeah.
I would never. For me, it has to be authentic. And I see
Yeah.
LinkedIn as it's just this big networking event. It's like going to an event, but it's on several different levels bigger. But it's still an event. It's still meeting people. Fundamentally, we're meeting people.
Yeah.
I get those people who on LinkedIn they message me and they're like, "Hey Dan, do you want to buy a farm?" And I'd be like, at what point did you think I'd want to buy a farm? If I had this last week, I'd be the worst farmer in the world, or I wouldn't know my pitchfork from my spade. I'd do terrible. Um, but it's like a networking event. You go to a networking event and you say that to me, then I'm not going to be that interested. But if we can connect on a values level, like John, you and me did in Dubai, right? We get chatting, and then magic happens.
Yeah.
We don't know where
Yeah.
that's going
Yeah.
to go, but magic happens, and it's the exact same thing. Just because it's an online platform doesn't mean we have to treat that fundamentally different.
Yeah. I mean, like there we were on the like 50th floor in the pool looking out over Dubai, and you're just some dude, right? You're younger than I am. You're better looking than I am. I have reasons to be jealous of you.
I
And
don't
then
think.
we started talking, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. Like what a great story. And, we both have young kids that we're thinking about the future of the earth for. And like, I want to keep in touch with you and know what you're thinking and maybe run some ideas I have past you sometime. And then all of a sudden, like opportunities for business show up too. Right. But I think that that's one thing that something I was just talking about. I think it was yesterday. Like I noticed that there's this frustrating like thing pulling at me of like for the first time in the history of humanity, I can send an email to like more people than even live in my city, right? Or I could reach
Mm,
out to like more people in the world via LinkedIn through some automated whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so like I could automate reaching out in a way that like wasn't even available even 5 years ago, right? And definitely not 50. And at the same time, I can talk individually, one on one, to somebody that I can know something about before I even start talking to them. And I can, like, anywhere in the world almost, right? And like, the lazy part of me just wants to hit send once and have it all work, right? But I don't think that doesn't seem to be very effective to me. And I'm missing out on the fact sometimes, I think until pretty recently, that I could, with a little bit of personal effort, I could actually go talk to real human beings.
that's exactly it. And for me, all businesses and the fun of the businesses is talking to real human beings.
Yeah.
I have no. It's not about somebody becoming a client. It's about connecting with people, whether they become a client or not. That's the
Yeah.
fun of business. And I've tried those big. I love how you put it. You can contact more people than in my city. I've tried those kind of routes, and they just didn't sit well with me. And
Yeah.
I think I've got to the point where I've realized that we can get to as much scale as we possibly can, but the more scale and automation we build in, the less personal and authentic it becomes.
Yeah. Yep.
Of course, there's AI and things to make it slightly more personal, but it's never the same.
I get those emails, Dan,
Yeah.
right?
Do
Like,
you want to
I
buy a phone?
noticed that you were doing this the other day and blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
Right.
You did notice, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Your AI machine noticed.
Yeah.
And for me, it's what are the ways, and I love how you put it. What are the ways we can connect with the people, and it doesn't matter where they are in the world. Right? I love that what AI has done brilliantly is it's leveled the playing field. It's lifted people up. It doesn't matter whether we live in Indonesia or the UK. That's leveled it. What it means we can have conversation with people anywhere in the world and connect
Yeah.
meaningfully with them.
Yeah.
So what I build with founders on LinkedIn is it's about authenticity and keeping that integrity as a founder. Not spamming lots of people, not changing your voice, your leadership. Johnny do this magnificently, but being able to do it at scale that you can still connect meaningfully with people.
Yeah.
That I think is the sweet spot. And
Yeah.
it's 2 to 3 hours a week. It doesn't take that much time in terms of not those conversations, but in terms of making the system work to have those conversations.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. I mean, that's really, really cool. I was just having a conversation this morning with another friend of mine who's got a coaching business for contractors, and we were talking about how a long time ago I was listening to this woman talk about setting up your dating profile, and she was like, "Look, you don't want to use filters and take sexy bathing suit pictures for that 1 month of the year when you weigh less than you do now, right? You don't want to do that because you're not trying to go on lots of dates. You're trying to go on a few of the right dates. So make it really authentic. And if you snore like a, buzzsaw, put that in your dating profile because they're going to find out sooner or later. And if that's a deal breaker, why not find out now? And I was like, oh my God, I've been approaching my website all wrong. Like I've
Mm,
been treating my website like it's a net to just catch everything, and really, I should have been treating it like more like a filter to only let the right stuff through. And I think that when you do posts that are really authentic and maintain your integrity and don't try to reach everybody, try to reach the right people. I think I'm seeing a lot of that succeed really well, and I think people are starting to talk very openly about, like, I'm over vanity metrics like likes and views and stuff, right? I would be totally fine with way less views and a few real conversations that could potentially turn into something with people that I like, that I'd want to work with.
yeah, and I think it's great that it's going that way.
Yeah.
I'd make a slight. For me, I see it like this: if you can get really authentic content that can go wider than your typical client, that's a very good thing because the
Yeah.
more people who see it, the more likely you are to have your typical client looking at that. So some
Yeah.
content is almost you're slightly playing for that mass
Yeah.
reach, and that
Yeah.
and that
There's a place for
not
that.
all your content, not all exactly. There's a place for it. What that's doing is that's bringing you into other people's networks. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. Then you have the content that's really specific and doesn't have to get many likes, but is really, really want to resonate with the people you genuinely want to talk to, and that is
Yeah.
that filter bit. That's that shifting for gold. It's like and
Yeah.
and your messaging piece and how you talk about things, John, is absolutely it applies exactly to that. It's how do you resonate with the right kind of people. Um, that TED talk that's really going to fly. That the people who listen to it are like, yes, that's the person I want to talk to.
Yeah.
And so just mixing that up because I see lots and lots of founders doing um, that really kind of what I call like tight content.
Hmm.
It's just for that audience, and I kind of think of that as like small wings, like chicken wings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And almost staying in the lane. There is a part of that we have to do that, but I also want people to be condors. And I
Yeah.
might sound a bit mad now.
Yeah.
I want people to spread their wings, right? Because we have more than just one thing to talk about. It's not just
Yeah.
the business. And I think, talking about our personal stories is a big part of that. People by people. I connected with you on the firesides in that first night because you were telling me about your your .com businesses, right? And the struggles of it. It wasn't a rosy picture; it was a real picture. That was for me how I connected you. That's a genuinely brilliant personal story connection. But there's also many other things we can talk about. It's not just our business and our personal. And so I'd think the thing that I'd say is think about what are the 5 or 6 pillars that you can talk about, and they can be pretty broad, right? So for me, one of them is sustainability. It's
Oh,
huge,
yeah.
but it gives me something to play with within that area.
Yeah.
And I'm not just picking up random things. Like I'm going to stay within this area for one of my pillars. So I can be broad and be that condor, get the volume, and then I can be really specific when I want to be, to then like sort of bring in those more meaningful conversations. So there's a little bit of a dance on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it lands, it can be really, really effective.
I think that's a great distinction. I think that definitely is what I think I'm seeing work on LinkedIn. And I do think that it's the place,
Yeah, I'm not on any other social media.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. I shouldn't be.
I mean,
So
it depends on the business, but
you,
yeah, LinkedIn and knowing what you do, John, I think, yeah, that's the place to be.
yeah, I think so. Well, so, I know we're coming up to the end of our time and I want to respect your time. I also want to make sure that we didn't miss anything that you wanted to talk about, or is there anything I should still ask you or that you'd like to say?
That's a very thoughtful question. No, John, this has been an absolute blast, as always with you. So I really, really appreciate having me on. And I guess if people have any questions or want to pick up things that I've said, email me. It's dan@mymothertree.com. Or look out for me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Dan Sherrard-Smith. So add me on LinkedIn and we can keep chatting.
And I will put those things in the show notes if that's cool.
Very cool.
And then, like, I love what you're doing. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with us. And, I'll look forward to keeping in touch and hearing what you're doing. And, you know, as one dad to another, like really heartfelt thank you. Cause I think it's serious days.
Yeah, it is. And same to you, John. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us today on livelikealeader.show. If you like the show, please share it. Please give us 5-star review, help get the word out to other people. And we will see you again soon on livelikealeader.show. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.